Hey, you guys, it's Rodney with Dirty Air. I was actually just I was working in the office this afternoon, and just the things that you run across when you start working on YouTube and looking at different things, and I was really fascinated. I'm fascinated with older races, obviously, because I'm an older dude, and so I ran across this. Check this out. So this is from 1981 from ABC's Wide World of Sports. This is the 1981 Firecracker 400, which, back in those days, it was, July 4th is when that race was run. I mean, it didn't matter what day it was. And you can go back and when you watch this coverage, you can find it on YouTube. But this was like same day coverage in a very condensed version of this race that you found on Wide World of Sports. But I mean, take a look at this right here. This tells you how much NASCAR has changed and our sport has changed. This was 1981. So if you're not familiar with 1981, take a look at that. How about that Rick Wilson independent car right there? It's got like local sponsorship on it. 1981 was the year where NASCAR went and they downsized the race cars. They went from the big long wheelbase cars. They went down to the short wheelbase cars, and that year at Daytona, you had cars that were aero. It was kind of the beginning of the aero questionable stuff right there. You had Connie Saylor and John Alexander. I'm looking at this thing over here. John Anderson that went upside down during the 125s. Back in those days, the 125s at Daytona, and you couldn't keep the cars on the ground back in those days. But you just go back and look at this coverage right here. For one thing, the coverage. I mean, the footage is just so much different right here. But I mean, you take a look at this right here and watch these cars. The one thing, each and every time that I see one of these races from Daytona, back in these times, is when you watch them coming out of turn number four, how these cars, we talk about how with the aero cars, they were, stuck to the ground, and with the new car, the next gen car, whatever it is. But back in those days, the racetrack was so bumpy, and you would watch these cars coming at Daytona, most especially out of turn number four, and they would sit and they would bounce and they would move just every which way around here. And I mean, take a look at this right here. I mean, you've got a Richard Petty up on the point, Buddy Baker right behind him. These liveries that you watch on these race cars right there. That Haas Ellington car, the number one car, the Uno car, it was Hawaiian Tropic, for a long time, and they just kind of scooted things over and put the Uno on there and made that be the sponsor of that. And at various points, that car was actually painted up even like a Petty car. But look at this. I mean, for people that never got to see Richard Petty run up at the front of the pack. I mean, take a look at that. And I believe that's Timmy Richmond running in the third spot. I may be wrong with that. That's the 37 car. I was actually looking at the starting lineup at the beginning of the race, and I think it's him. I'm not absolutely positive. I'd have to go back and watch that. But just take a look at the differences these days with what we see these days. Here's Buddy Baker going down the inside as they make their way into turn number three. He's going to float right up there. A little bit of a slider. They go up to the top of the racetrack. I mean, these Buick Regals. This was the year of the Buick Regal. You had the Oldsmobile. You had the Thunderbird. You had, of course, you had the Outlier. You had the Le Mans. That the 28 car. At Daytona was, the Bobby Allison car there for Harry Ranier and those guys. It had the slope back window. None of these cars had sloped back windows. I mean, it was a square window where in the past they had run, the big cars. And it was just when we talk about the race cars changing and everything that I compare a lot. I talked about this a lot of times in the past to where last year with the radical change with the race car, and I use that radical term a lot because you talk about change in racing, and to me, when you see something like we saw last year with the new car that came into play, that seriously was a radical change because it was not so much the single lug nut. And take a look at this right here. This is Ricky Rudd. And I can remember the call right here because it's Keith Jackson. Keith Jackson on the call of this. Take a listen to this. Oh man, I don't think I can get you the audio right here. Maybe I can.
That's Benny Parsons coasting to a stop
I
down
don't know
on
if
the.
that's actually going to work. But it was, they come out of the corner, and Keith Jackson says, "We've got a car on the wall. We've got a car on the wall. It's Ricky Rudd. Car number 88 is on the wall." And that happens right there. It kind of ripped the side off of that Dyguard car. And 81, when you think about 1981, all of the years that Darrell Waltrip had been behind the wheel of the 88 car there with Dyguard, and the look at that, Billy Harvey, man, how about that? That's a name for Texas race fans. That's a name that I think you would remember. There's Ricky Rudd out of the car. I mean, obviously the main concern right there, but Benny Parsons in the Bud Moore car. Ironically, Benny Parsons winning the final race at Texas World Speedway, the Budweiser 400 that year. Later that year, he wins that race, the Budweiser 400 at Texas World Speedway. But, 81 was a year where not only did the car change, but that's when you really saw, when you talk about silly season, I mean, you had the change right there where Cale Yarbrough stepped away from, I mean, he'd won 3 championships there with Junior Johnson. I mean, he won all of those championships there. He goes to Darrell Waltrip. He says, let's take a look at the replay. Here they come out of turn number 4, coming down the short chute, and you see the contact right there, turning head on into the wall. There goes the 88 car right into the wall. Hits right there at the gate. And I think that's what was one of the things of this crash. I mean, he hits at the gate, just rips the whole right side off of that race car. And that automobile just kind of sits and spins, and luckily he stays up to the top of the speedway to be able to stay out of traffic of all the guys coming down. But 81 was the year where you had the shift where Darrell Waltrip goes to Junior Johnson, and we get another replay there. No matter how you look at it, it's a hell of a crash. But you get Darrell Waltrip going to Junior Johnson. 1981, Darrell Waltrip wins 12 races and the Cup Championship. Winston Cup Championship. Look at that right there. Hot damn. I always say if you're going to wreck it right. 1982, Darrell Waltrip with Junior Johnson wins another championship, wins 12 more races. 24 races in 2 seasons, guys. That doesn't happen anymore. I know Young Money won 10 races a couple of years back, but it's not. You're not going to see guys winning 12 races a year anymore in Cup racing. But also that, like I showed you right there, Benny Parsons had driven for MC Anderson. He moved over to Bud Moore. You had before that, you had with the MC Anderson team. Now you had a gaping hole right there in the 27. Cale Yarbrough takes a limited schedule and moves over to the MC Anderson number 27 and won almost every damn race that he was in the 27 car. Look at that. Sheesh. Look at that right there. Total destruction. Everything gone on the right side. Look at that NASCAR control. NASCAR control. Look at that state-of-the-art technology back in those days. But I think also 1981 is the year where the year prior you had Dale Earnhardt that had won with Rod Osterlund, won the 1980 Winston Cup Championship. He moves over. He goes to, he stays with Osterlund, but midway through that year, Richard Childress, who is actually in this race, RC is in this race, Earnhardt is in the race in the Osterlund number 2, but right around this time is when Richard Childress says, you know what, I'm going to take a step back, I'm going to be a team owner, and boom. This was the first time that you had Childress and Dale Earnhardt together. Didn't last very long because the next year Dale goes and blows up and wrecks all of Bud Moore's number 15 cars. But then in 1983 they get back together, and the rest is history on how all of that happened. But 81, just a great year for me, and a year that I will always remember in my years of racing. Because, I mean, look at the competition right here. This is Bobby Allison up at the front of the pack at this point. This is when the 28, they'd gone to the Buick Regals. They had ditched the Le Mans thing. But there is Neil Bonnet in the Wood Brothers number 21 as he runs right behind them, heading down the back straightaway. Waltrip down on the inside as he had gotten into trouble right there with the Ricky Rudd race. But, I mean, just look at this, man. This is old school racing. This is good old NASCAR Grand National racing. And I love Grand National racing, man. It's one of those genres that really hooked me into loving this sport. And when you talk about how NASCAR is different, They still race like this. But the characters are different. The characters are different. The TV quality is much better. But I mean, this is just, I mean, look at this. This is amazing. And this was 1981. Same day coverage, like I said, of the Firecracker 400 that went down at Daytona International Speedway. Man, great times. I'm going to post more of these videos where I'll kind of go back and just give you my thoughts on some of these great events of the past. And it'll be from the 80s. I'll probably go into the 70s. Hell, I'll probably even go into the 60s of just great races that, I tell you, I sit and I watch, and I just love that. Man, look at that. This is great stuff. You guys hang around. Stay tuned to this channel. Like this channel. It's RPM Multimedia. You get not only Dirty Air, but you get the Revved Up Sports Show, which is every week as well. And lots of cool stuff, special stuff that you're going to start finding as we head towards the off season and we head to big race season. My name is Rodney Rodriguez. Guys, stay in that dirty air because stuff like this, there was no clean air back then. All that air was dirty. There had been forest fires that had been burning in the Daytona area at that time. Look at the haze right there. I mean, not only do you have the quality of the picture not very good, a lot of that is because of smoke that was in the area, man. You want to talk about dirty air. Good stuff. Stick around, and I'm going to bring you a lot more great racing memories. Have a great race weekend, friends. We'll see you soon.